Hello everybody, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today I'm going to be doing a watercolor painting of a snow scene. This snow scene comes out of Virginia, I believe, where my friends Teresa and Justin live. And they had taken a picture of their dog, Junebug, I believe is her name, playing in the snow. And apparently the dog was originally first scared of the snow and then kind of warmed up to it. And they posted it online, and I kind of just wanted to try to do a painting of it. Also down here in Louisiana, we're having a freeze, and we actually have some snow and ice out on the ground, which is really cool. So it just seems fitting. Anywho, in front of me I have a 8x10 sheet of Stonehenge Aqua, 100% cotton, 140 pound cold press, and I'm going to, when I upload this, I'm going to see if there's a way for me to edit it where I can put the picture that I'm working from somewhere in this in the scene. If it's not there, that means I just wasn't able to figure it out just yet. So I'm kind of going to push the sky in a little bit different direction. I don't think I'm going to go completely wet and wet with this. I'm going to use a mop brush and kind of just create a whole wet scene as I kind of play over everything. So this is some raw sienna that I'm going to utilize for the sky. The sky looks very white with maybe a tint of blue in it, but I feel like giving it a little bit of tone, a little bit of a value will help differentiate it between the snow that's actually taking place elsewhere. Let me grab a little bit of ultramarine into this mix for a little bit of a gray. All right. Now, in my areas where the snow is going to be, it's very diagonal composition. I'm going to use a little bit of light method of ultramarine and kind of a little bit of grays to use the whites of the paper and kind of just little shadows sitting on the snow. Okay. Now they have a lake or a pond on their property. It's in this region right here. So I'm going to grab some color for that. I feel like ultramarine is too much looking at the picture, so I'm going to gray it down a little bit. I really don't paint the exact colors that I see in a picture that I'm working with. I kind of just use it for compositional elements and like tonal values. But I'll try to paint closer to natural values for this. Mix some ultramarine blue with raw sienna for that gray. Now I'm trying to grab a little bit of that cerulean blue. Putting that in here. That's the closer edge of the water. And then the far edge has some tree reflections. So I'm going to grab ultramarine blue and burnt sienna for my dark. Kind of just play around on that far edge. Now the interesting thing is, in this photograph there's like a harsh dark line between the snow line and the water itself. So I'm going to put that in. That's a little bit of Payne's gray. It will lighten up, but we'll see what happens. Going back to a slight bluish tone. This is far background. trying to leave some whites of the paper, but I feel like I have already covered too much of the white. But we'll see what happens as we go along and as we progress with values. I'm going to grab light red oxide and my ultramarine blue, my go-to dark blue, my not dark, but my background blue. Use that for kind of a top of a tree line back here. Now, like I said, I wasn't going to wet the paper. I'm using the squirrel mop to essentially wet the paper and create broad washes. And what that's doing is now causing the paper to buckle. So that's why I have them clipped. And I'm going to get it to flatten out a little bit. In this background, I'm also going to put lines for far distant trees. And this will soften up. This is just the far, far distant effect. I may even play around with a little bit of splattering back here, but we'll see how things go. And looking at the original painting, the water is a little bit bluer in here. So this is more cerulean. So I think I'll let that be emphasized. Okay. Grab some water to kind of soften some edges. And we'll grab the number 4 rigger, and I'll use that to kind of splatter. I'm going to put a paper towel down so that I don't get my sky all messed up. Kind of mix dark. Hopefully you can kind of still see what I'm working with. Yeah. So this is just experimental right here, mixing ultramarine burnt umber and splattering wet and wet for texture. Get some Payne's Gray, trying to darken and get a variety for the splatter. And I'm going to do different concentrations of this splatter. Some areas a lot of splatter, some areas a little bit. And that paper towel is there just to protect the sky a little bit, just so we don't get splatters popping up all the way there. This edge, I'm going to do a splatter along that too, because I have some foliage there that we're going to wind up doing. So I'll just do that now. Okay. So now we have a little bit more texture going on, a little bit more variety, rather than just kind of a single wash. Just flattening everything out. And here, I'm going to start playing with tree trunks and shadows and reflections. Now with those on the far line, I'm going to grab some ultramarine and burnt umber. I'm going to put the tree in. These trees extend all the way up. And the reason I'm doing them now before I did a dry off is that I also want to bring down the reflections in the water while my water is still wet and wet. I could have just marked them off where they're going to be and then created the reflections from there. But I'm just doing it in this fashion. So could have probably taken a few different approaches there. So this guy, their reflections I feel are just the most important thing I have to do reflection wise. Other than that, the kind of gradation in this wash is kind of good enough for me, I think, right now. Okay. And I mentioned earlier how kind of the far distant portion has that darker shadow and it's bluer closer, so I'm just accentuating that some as well. Try to get a little dry brush right there just to get some variety. Okay, at this point, I believe I want to do my dry off. I'm going to grab a little bit of this gray, kind of do a little bit accentuation marks in the snow, just a little bit more variety. This is kind of the path that the dog made walking back and forth, and I'll probably put the dog in this region, and we're gonna have a little dock here, and that dock will help the eye from going off the page. So it's a very good photograph that she took. It was very well, it makes a lot of sense compositionally. So let me pause this real quick. All right, now before I start working on the foreground and we're dry, I want to do a little bit more splattering in that background. I'm once again going to kind of cover up part of the sky just to prevent the splatters from really hitting there. I'm trying to go for a wash or a mixture of paint and pigments that will dry kind of lighter so that they recede more in the picture plane. And we do have accentuated trees back here. Accentuated tree here as well. We can see a lot of I'm going to take the #1 rigger and put in texture with that in terms of twigs and branches. This is just light washes. Twigs and branches coming off of these. There's going to be some foreground tree elements and branches, so I'm not too concerned about how well these are put together in the background. They're just more there so that there's that illusion of depth taking place. Nope, a little bit too much ultramarine in that one. You know, that far line that I had mentioned earlier. Do a little accentuation on that. And I think for right now, especially limiting the time frame of the videos, I'm going to pause. I'm not going to pause it. I'm going to stop working on the background now, and I'm going to start working on this line right here, creating our closer tree elements. I'm going to put them darker in value. So burnt umber and ultramarine. And the goal here is to create this line that will then stand closer to us and push the trees in the background further away. So these closer elements are quite thin. You might want to play around with the thickness of them. Reason being, it might help you let them sit closer in the picture plane. Or, like I said, we're doing them darker. That might be enough to help push them forward. Now, I'll come back to those guys in a moment. Like I said, there's a little dock right here. So let's put that in now. And this is going to help the eye from going off the page. And the dock has snow on it. So just going to kind of put some ideas of it there. I'm not going to focus too much on the structure. And my goal is to then have it so that it seems like there's snow sitting on top of it. Hey, Percy. Percy, gonna say hi to everybody? All right, I'm gonna come back here. I do feel like we have enough tall and enough variety there. I'm going to do little marks at their bases to let them kind of sit in place. With snow, especially the windy snow, sometimes it'll pile up and leave indentures on some sides of it. There is no super visual shadows here, but I can pretend that there are and have the light come from this direction. So I'm taking a mixture of blue to kind of create this. We'll have the light coming from this region and it'll spoke out in that fashion. So remember that all the shadows aren't going to point in the same direction. They're going to create kind of a spoking wheel effect. So think about how that angle is going to change for them. Always keep that in mind. Okay, now I'm going to switch over to the number 1 rigger. I had mentioned that with really tight twigs and things like that, I've wanted to maybe get an even smaller brush for those. Some people had mentioned in the YouTube comments that they personally will take a brush and cut them down to the sizes that they need. I don't know what brush I can sacrifice for that just yet. I've been looking on Blick's website, and the Blick brand brushes that are squirrel hair, because this is silver black velvet, which is squirrel hair, and it works really well with water and pigment retention. The Blick brand had some smaller widths. I'm thinking about maybe potentially taking that route. By the way, now's a good time for me to kind of give my little spiel as I paint this part. If you ever want to support this channel, I have links down below. Simply liking and subscribing helps a lot. I do have a Patreon account if you want to support me on there. I even have a simpler support system called, it's like Buy Me a Coffee, and that's linked down below. It's very easy just to do like a PayPal donation. And also another thing with the disclaimer is that with any of these paintings, you are more than welcome to follow along. You're more than welcome to sign your name to it. I want you all to be successful and have fun and sell paintings and be able to support art supplies. All the random branches that are sitting down on the ground, kind of giving that texture there, and that'll accentuate next to the white to give us the idea of snow. I didn't do any masking fluids, or I don't think I'm going to use acrylic or a gouache at all, the white, but you're more than welcome to use that. One guy that has great YouTube videos on painting snow is Rick S. All you have to do is to go into Google and type in watercolor Rick, and it pops up, and he has a great technique with masking fluid and whatnot. Very good approach. Okay, I may come back to these guys in a moment, because just putting the branches in is kind of a little bit tedious. So I'm going to switch back to the squirrel mop. Grab a little bit of ultramarine blue, just to kind of play around a little bit more with shadows. I'm going to take a darker mixture for splattering foregrounds. This is Payne's Gray. I'm going to splatter up. So what I'm going to do is a quick pause for a dry off. I'm going to look at putting the dog in, and we'll see what happens. Alright, so I did a quick dry off, and I have an extra cut of paper, which is really good for practicing little elements to see how they're going to work within it. I am not really adept at figures or animals. Their gestural marks are very important. One person who's just been knocking it out of the park with gestural marks with people and dogs and all that has been Ian Campbell. If you're on the Ranson Facebook page, I highly recommend joining that. And I think I need to just start putting a link down below, since that's the one I'm always talking about. And he has just been like putting in awesome figures in his fast and loose paintings, and I am just so envious of his skill. It's just really talented. I want the animal to be in motion, so I may have to focus on that V with the front leg, his face. I'm gonna have to play around with the snoot a little bit, maybe add some dark. Maybe even leave some light aspects. So I'm going to put the dog about here, and I'll probably make it a little bit larger, so we'll see what happens. I'm going to go for a lighter wash. I'll put, I believe, like I said, the dog's name is Junebug. I believe she was initially scared of the snow. I think now she was just, you know, running around doing zoomies. So I'm looking at the head. There's the white on the underbelly, so I'm going to try to leave a little bit of white of paper there. But the two legs, the one leg will come down. Try to pull more paint and less water. The one leg will come down. The next one on the other side of the underbelly comes out and forward in that running motion. This leg is longer. And then the back and the rump. Now, my camera does seem to stop recording at the 30-minute mark. So once I get this in, I'm probably going to end the video. And then I'll do some off-camera adjustments, just adding in more twigs and stuff like that. And probably playing around with the dog a little bit more. That lower body goes on an angle here. It comes up. And that snoot comes out. I'll play around some more. So let's see where we're at time-wise. We're at 26 minutes. I'm going to keep going for another minute or two. And you know, like I said, of course, you're more than welcome to follow along. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, let me know. Definitely check out Rick S. that I mentioned with his snow scenes, especially if you're you like using gouache. It comes out. Back leg comes out. And obviously this dog's going to cast a shadow. See how it looks. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video here. I'm going to do a little bit of off-camera work. I'll show you what it looks like underneath the mat so far. And like I said, you are more than welcome to follow along. I think I said that like 3 times, so I apologize. And then I'm also going to try to take that image and superimpose it on the video. But that's what it looks like underneath the mat. Pretty cool experiment, especially not using a resist or masking fluid or gouache for water for snow. Hope you all enjoy. I'll talk to you all soon.